Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the SARIM webinar. This is Tasveer Fatima, and I am representing the South Asia Research Institute for Minorities based in Istanbul, Turkey. SARIM is an organization deeply committed to promoting justice, equality, and inclusion by amplifying the voices of historically marginalized and minority communities across South Asia. Today, we gather together not only to celebrate women's achievements but to examine the structural inequalities that continue to shape the lives of millions of women globally, particularly those who stand at the intersection of multiple marginalized identities. International Women's Day, officially recognized by United Nations, is not merely symbolic, it is a global call for equity and inclusion. We are grateful to all our speakers, partners, and participants who have joined us today for this important discussion titled International Women's Day Spotlight: Triple Burden on Minority Women, Caste, Creed, and Gender. Okay, so now I would like to welcome Ms. Talat Yousuf, who is an accomplished gender expert based in Porto, Portugal, with extensive experience in gender justice, intersectionality, and minority rights advocacy. Her work focuses on dismantling structural inequalities affecting women from marginalized communities. Ms. Talat also brings a deeply analytical yet community-centered perspective to communications and conversations on gender equality. Ms. Talat, you can have the mic now.
Okay, thank you so much. Hi and assalamu alaikum everyone. I'm Talat Yousuf from Portugal, and as you introduced me very well this week, thank you so much. I'm the research associate and in gender studies and definitely culture analysis and community development. So I want to start here from for the thanks for everyone. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be a part of this significant session. It is an honor to speak on a critical issue that deeply matters and demands our attention. Before we move towards today's theme, triple burden on minority women, it is important to clarify the difference between the sex and gender. That is very important. Like sex is referred to, I know everyone knows that refer to biological differences between male and female, just, such as chromosomes, hormones, and reproductive growth. But on the other hand, what is the gender? Gender refers to the socially constructed roles, behaviors, expectations, and that societies assign to people based on their sex. So the term today's theme is triple burden of on minority burden. Women refer to the multiple and interrelated form of discrimination that certain women experience simultaneously. First, may face inequality because they are women in patriarchal system. Second, they may belong to a marginalized caste, ethnic group, or a social class, which expose them to structural exclusion. Third, that may belong to a minority religion, making them vulnerable on basis of the social marginalization. The three dimensions like gender, caste, and creed do not operate separately. They impact reinforce each other, creating component disadvantages in education, employment, political participation, and access to justice. Gender, caste, and creed interconnected, how? We are an interdisciplinary group. We have brought varying lenses to this special issue. So we can say that gender, caste, and creed are interconnected because they do not operate separately in a person's life. Instead, they overlap, influence how someone experiences in the society. Like gender dimension, social roles, power, relation, expectations, place of women and men in many societies. Women already inequality in education. This is very crucial. Employment, leadership, and safety. Caste, our social status, caste or social hierarchy affect access to opportunities and respect resources. Women from marginalized caste often experience deeper poverty, limited education, and high vulnerability to violence. As well as creed, we can say that in a religious identity can also shape social inclusion, exclusion. Minority women may face discrimination due to their faith, stereotype, or restricted representation. So we can say that gender, caste, and creed are interconnected because they shape a person's identity at the same time. When these identities are linked in inequality, they reinforce each other and create deeper barriers. That is, minority women often experience layered discrimination rather than a single form of injustice. We can make an example. As a woman, she may face gender discrimination, such as being discouraged from pursuing higher education or leadership roles. And as well as because she belongs to a lower or marginalized caste, she may experience social exclusion, limited economic opportunities, or biased treatment within institutions. As well as at the third word is a minority religion. She may face religious stereotyping, discrimination, or reduced representation in public spaces. Now, these challenges do not happen separately, they overlap. For example, if she applies for a job, her gender may already disadvantage. Her caste background may limit her network and references. Her religious identity may expose her to unconscious bias during recruitment. As a result, she faces barriers, they are deeper and more complex, those faced by women from dominant social and religious group. I have two experiences because I'm basically from Pakistan. I have experience of Asia, and as well as I live in Europe, Portugal. So I have two experiences. In a European context, we can say that imagine a woman from a migrant background living in Europe. As a woman, she may already face gender pay gap or underrepresentation in leadership roles. As women from a migrant or minority ethnic background, she may experience racial discrimination because of her religious identity. For example, wearing a hijab, she may face bias in hiring a workplace stereotype. I'm Nowadays I'm working on gender discrimination and the glass ceiling in Europe's high tech sector. My case study is on Sweden, so I want to explain this. Sweden is internationally recognized as a leader in gender equality, yet structural inequality persists in high tech sector. Women account to roughly one quarter of ICT specialists, according to European Institute for Gender Equality 2024, and approximately one third of the tech workforce overlap. Overall, vertical segregation remain evident, with the men dominating managerial and high-paid technical roles. Uh, Empirical evidence demonstrate that women remain underrepresented in technology, particularly in leadership. According to a 2022 National Center for Women and Information Technology report, women hold only 26% of computing jobs and 11% of senior position in Silicon Valley. Underscoring star leadership disparity, this vertical segregation is reinforced by the persistent gender pay gap. On average, women in the software industry earn 85% for every dollar earned by men, a disparity that persists across job types and seniority level, indicating structure rather than form-specific problem. The gender pay gap continued existing in highlights systematic injustice and deeply ingrained discrimination that impaired women's economic advancement. And this is an alarming situation in European category. Now we are discussing in South Asian, we have an example. Consider women from a historically marginalized caste who also belong to a religious minority. As a woman, she faced patriarchal restrictions as a member of a lower caste, and she may experience social exclusion and limited access to resources. As a part of religious minority, she may face discrimination of reduced protection during social conflict. Research has shown that violence against women from marginalized castes is often both gender based and caste motivated. So we can say that these examples demonstrate that inequality operates through interconnected system of power. Gender discrimination become more severe when combined with social hierarchy and religious marginalization. So we can say that therefore solution must be intersectional rather than one dimensional. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I loved what you had to say about the women empowerment, about the South Asian region and religious minorities. Also, you gave some insights on the European women experience. So, thank you so much, Miss Talat Yousuf. Now, our third speaker is Miss Manisha Rani, who serves as a program coordinator at All India Dalit Mahila Adhikar Manch, a leading platform advocating for Dalit women's rights in India. She has been at the forefront of mobilizing grassroots movement against caste-based discrimination, gender violence, and systemic exclusion. Miss Manisha, you can have the mic now, and we would love to hear your thoughts.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. Jai Bhim, and thank you, Tasveer, for such a lovely introduction and for having me to speak on such an important occasion. I represent All India Dalit Mahila Adhikar Manch, a national collective of Dalit women working across 5 states in India. Our work is rooted in communities where caste and patriarchy shape everyday realities. As the title itself says, triple burden, I'll try to highlight how triple layer of oppression is faced by Dalit women in India. Just for the basic, I'm going to share my screen. Just for the basics. Yeah. I hope you can see my screen. So, okay, just a small background in very simple language. What does caste mean? Caste means a system where people are placed into social groups by birth, and these groups decide their social status, work, and interactions in the society. As you can see, that the small pyramid. If you see the first 3 levels, these are called Savarna caste. This is the caste pyramid. These 3 are called Savarna caste, and we can see that the 4th and 5th level are Shudras and Dalits, which is considered to be outside the traditional Varna system from centuries. The term Dalit, it means broken, oppressed, and they are also called untouchables. The term is used by communities historically subjected to caste-based discrimination. As Dalit are considered untouchable, so Savarna caste are not allowed to sit with them, have food with them, visit their houses. There has been segregated settlements from the centuries for Dalit communities. Caste-based occupations is also different based on your caste identities. And violence is used as a mechanism for social control whenever we talk about Dalit women. Second, when we talk about their gender identity, Dalit women are subjected to what scholars describe as dual patriarchy. Here, when we see in the social hierarchy, Brahmins are at the top. And when we talk about Dalit women, they face triple burden of patriarchy, which is Brahminical patriarchy and internal Dalit patriarchy. Their bodies often become sites where caste hierarchies are enforced and punished. Mainstream feminism in India has largely centered Savarna women's experiences, while Dalit political discourse has often centered caste oppression without fully addressing gender vulnerability. And lastly, when we talk about class, we see that Dalit women are not just marginalized as women, nor only as Dalits. They experience compounded structural exclusion where caste, patriarchy, and poverty reinforce one another. So that's how we see that how triple layer of burden Dalit women has been carrying the triple layer of burden. And this is backed up by data. I'll just share with you some of the findings, some of the data of Ministry of Home Affairs. Recently, data has been published where it shows that crime against Dalit women have increased nearly by 50%, 50%, In 2015, the crime recorded against Dalit women was around 5,000. Now in 2023, it was more than 800. Between these 9 years, from 2015 to 2025, more than 66,000 incidents of crime against Dalit women and girls were recorded. In 2023 alone, an average of 12 Dalit women and girls were raped every day. Nearly 3 out of these 10 rape victims were minors. I'd like to highlight an act called Scheduled Caste and Scheduled Tribe Prevention of Atrocities Act, which is there to prevent, to safeguard the rights of Dalit communities. When I talk about the law, the conviction rate under this act stands only 23%, acquittal rate is 72%, and pendency is as high as 94%. Institutional bias compounds this vulnerability. FIR are delayed or refused. Survivor face caste abuse. Counter cases are filed. Arrests are postponed. Provisions of SC/ST Act are diluted or ignored. Court often dismiss caste as a motivating factor. Local authorities sometimes deny structural caste discrimination, blame survivor, or normalize oppression. This entrances impunity and reinforces intergenerational cycle of inequality. This is around the crime against women, Dalit women. And when we talk about social and economical barrier for Dalit women, I would like to highlight that nearly half of Dalit women remain illiterate, and only about 16% access higher education, 43% have joint houses, and only 30% have joint land ownership, and only 44% Dalit women can travel alone. There is also a deep caste-gender digital divide, limiting access to information, services, and opportunities. Employment patterns reflect systemic exclusion. Rural employment has increased numerically, but remains insecure and poorly paid. When I talk about urban employment, it remains high. Dalit women are largely concentrated in distress-driven informal labor such as domestic and sanitation work and sugarcane labor industry. I'd also like to highlight a practice which has been there historically, which is called Devadasi system, which is to dedicate the Dalit women and on the name of religious practice for sexual exploitation. Although it has been stopped, but still the daughters of those who were dedicated face the impact of such practices. Low social economic indicators reinforces dependence on dominant caste employers, increasing vulnerability to sexual exploitation and workplace abuse. I'll be highlighting talking about the political representation of Dalit women in India. Dalit women remain severely underrepresented in national and state legislature. Approximately 12 to 13 Dalit women MPs, member of parliaments, which is around 2.2% of the lower house. Although Panchayati Raj reservation have increased representation at local level, many Dalit women representatives face intimidation, proxy control by male relatives, which means many male relatives actually control their decision making, and they hold the control and they hold the decision making power. Representation without power does not dismantle caste patriarchy. So that's how we see that how triple layer of burden the women has been carrying. Now, when I talk about EDMA's work, All India Dalit Mahila Adhikar's Manch work, we see that we work around legal intervention, basically reinforcing the SC/ST Act. And when we have seen that police refusing to register cases under the Act, basically recognizing the caste factor, we see that survivors pressured into compromise. We see social boycott. We see counter cases filed, and which is basically to silence the families. We see that when we talk about leadership building, we see that our leaders have been fighting for basic necessities such as clean water, sanitation services, housing. We have genuinely seen that Pakka streets do come to Savarna communities, but they do not come to Dalit communities, which is within the same village. We also see that Dalit women forming collectives through our interventions. We see women demanding FIR registration. We see elected Dalit women leaders asserting their authority despite threats. At EDMOM, we conduct legal literacy programs, leadership trainings, fact-finding missions, and we try to enforce SCST Act. We do skill building training with adolescent girls. We work to prevent violence and strengthen political participation. And we have seen through our work that Dalit women are not passive victims. They are knowledge producers, movement builders, and leaders in grassroots democracy. Little bit about diaspora and global feminism. Caste discrimination is not confined within Indian borders. It exists within diaspora communities as well. Dalit women are shaping global anti-caste disclosure by linking caste with race and structural discrimination. They're expanding feminist frameworks to confront hierarchies not only between men and women, but within community themselves. Dalit feminism challenges global feminism to address internal inequalities and to recognize caste as a critical axis of structural oppression. This is not only a national issue, it is a global issue. Lastly, a few recommendations. First of all, it's the very beautiful act, Scheduled Caste and Scheduled Tribe Prevention of Atrocities Act. It is very important to strengthen this act and accountability mechanism and fast track courts. That's very important. Secondly, maybe civil society organization must integrate a caste gender-based lens across all programs. Dalit women must be recognized as rights holder, not beneficiaries. Third, funding agencies must prioritize caste-based gender equality and invest in Dalit leadership development within communities. And on the closing remark, I'd like to say that Dalit women do not merely survive oppression. They are reimagining democracy from the margins. If justice is to be meaningful, it must center those who experience the sharpest edge of structural inequalities. This is Manisha from EDGOM. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Manisha, for participating wholeheartedly in the webinar and also for raising your voice for the Dalit women in India and globally. Now, I would like to welcome our next speaker, Ms. Advocate Gauri Kumari, who is also from India. She's a prominent Dalit rights activist and legal practitioner committed to challenging caste-based discrimination and injustices through constitutional and legal frameworks. Ms. Gauri, you can share your thoughts now.
Yes. Good afternoon, Jai Bhim, all of you. Because in India we have court hour during working hour. Therefore, I will speak very short, briefly. But speaker, Happy International Women's Day, all of you, my friends. But much is sharing is a problem faced by Ukraine women. These are problems faced the women regards of their background, especially Dalit women. Main points. India's Bihar, there is a BJP RSS government, but SC/ST Business Committee, I am permanent member, but Dalit women violence against Dalit women, victim, not a time. The head officers not a meeting join, but SC/ST legal सेल है उसे बहुत ही अनदेखी किया जा रहा है, खास करके दलित महिलाओं के केसेस को लेकर के। विक्टिम कोर्ट में नॉट ए रिलीफ और बट सवर्ण कास्ट is not a supported officer. Dalit women, tribal women face with this discrimination in India. The discrimination is education has little place is politics because not a education uh, uh, polity policy is not a perfect. Dalit women, Dalit girls is a higher education. Dalit women, Dalit SC/ST women, not a Dalit political place is not a support mind of the upper caste as a senior leader. uh, just Bihar election backward leader के नाम पे ना वो सी विमेन फंडामेंटल राइट विमेन इंडस्ट्रियल्स फंडिंग बट नॉट ए सपोर्ट जय भीम बस सीन से बट since a BJP RSS government come to power in India, there has been a lot of legal confusion. A particular during a SCST balance committee, no a formal representation is provided of the head officers. Any problem, very problem is the SCST women face of this time of the India. Thank you, all of.
That's totally understandable. Thank you so
Okay,
much
thank you,
for sharing your
thank you.
Okay, so now we have Miss Mrudula Vanangamudi. She's a rights-based legal practitioner in Bengaluru, India. Her work is dedicated to advancing social justice through strategic litigation and advocacy. Mrudula brings a nuanced understanding of how caste, religion, and gender intersect within India's legal and social systems. Miss Mrudula, the floor is yours now.
Thank you, thank you. I'll also be a little brief, and a lot of points I wanted to also talk about has been covered by
Right.
Manisha. Thank you so much. Women who are from marginalized communities with intersecting oppressive forces acting upon their lives are more vulnerable. This is a systemic force. How does a systemic structurally systemic forces, how do they render them vulnerable? One is by or render access to justice costlier by rendering their lives cheap, or committing violence against them is cheap for people. It costs them very little. And and I'm looking at it in terms of a cost and benefit analysis, because think about it, there's an entire society that is built upon your labor and oppression, right? Starting with of course you're and you're at the bottom, receiving end of all of society's burdens, emotional and physical and material. You're at the bottom of all of it. You're supposed to hold up everything, and yet what are the prejudices that hold you there? Starting with who, and you're starting with the question of worth, right? Where a person's dignity is considered very less valuable. What happens when they try to acknowledge, try to inform authorities about what happens to them? Nobody knows them. One small thing is that nobody knows them because they've had very little representation in flows of power, and because of that their lives are very poorly understood. So what happens when they, starting with even reporting violence, they are unable to have authorities recognize and acknowledge their violence? this this renders violence against them cheap as well, because who's going to believe you if I act on you and I perform violence upon your body? The very fact that your existence is so undocumented, your existence is so is so precarious, will ensure that I go scot free if I commit violence against women bearing the burdens of caste, gender, and creed, or creed. So where does that take you from there? So if your violence cannot be recognized, and where do you go from there? And also, one thing is that their lives are so undocumented that the rigorous process that the criminal justice system or any legal process entails, it's not possible for it their lives are not documented in a way that makes it legible to these institutions, like the legal criminal justice system, for example, which makes their testimonies even more weaker. Right, the fact that when a Savarna woman or anybody from a privileged background, when they tell their story, it bears more credibility automatically. Why? Because there's an entire group of people that has already been informed about their lives and existence, right? Like we all know what it is to be or what their lives is, because all of knowledge is produced with their perspective in mind, right? So what that does to the criminal justice system is make it very unequal, because if you have to have a certain standard of evidence to establish your case, there is systemic deprival of evidence, that a systemic deprival of that documentation or building evidence or access to that kind of legitimacy for your life. For example, I'll give you an example. A lot of divorce cases that we handle, when we're representing women from marginalized communities, it's very hard for them to even find something as basic as a marriage document, any document that proves their marriage, like something as basic as that. So it becomes very difficult for us to show an existence of marriage so that they can get maintenance or any other reliefs that they want. And their lives become ambiguous by such lack of documentation. And the reason why documentation is hard is because they're probably moving from one place to another. They're either migrant workers, or they are unable to live in the place they are born for too long, like the way others are able to establish that root, at some place, have their roots firm, and that roots also has a lot of connection to property ownership, which again is not there. Unless you own property in a place, you can keep moving from one place to another, and generationally as well, in your existence will be forgotten very quickly. So that plays a role as well. Then also the entire legal the entire process becomes very unaffordable for them. For example, you can't for example, you can't miss a day's work for your continuous hearings and deposing evidence. It becomes very hard for some of my clients to even miss their day job and miss their work. They don't get leave to come and depose in court. And often the other side takes advantage of it and ensures that they keep taking date after date to compel the witness or the victim to come to court, and then basically exhaust them. So that's another strategy we've seen, that the more vulnerable people are. Uh, yeah. Then there is also the fact that the narrative of Dalit women in court is, of course, it's often seen with a lot of suspicion, in the sense that I remember this one case where this woman, she was deposing her witness and her statements, and something about, like, there are questions asked by people where it's not asked to Savarna women for some reason, and those of course have to do with how Savarna women are imagined and represented, whereas as well. Of course, then there's another thing, that who supports your witness and testimony. So that's where the social capital aspect comes to forefront, because the more people you have who can support your version or perspective, especially in places of power, the more your statement or whatever you're deposing gets value or credibility. And very hard for people to understand your experience and then, like, give it the due credibility. So it's always easy to dismiss them. It's easier to erase their narratives and document something else. So these are all the reasons that I've seen, the triple burden bear more heavily on marginalized women, especially in their pursuit of justice. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry. I just said that thank you so much for sharing your insights, and I absolutely agree with your thought process. We are done with our speakers now. So, as we conclude today's session, I would like to extend my deepest gratitude to our speakers, participants, and organizing team for making this dialogue possible. On this International Women's Day, let us move beyond symbolic celebration towards sustained advocacy, inclusive policy, and accountable institutions. Stay connected with us through sarimwatch.original and our social media pages for more dialogues on peace, inclusion, and minority rights in South Asia. Until next time, this is Tasveer Fatima signing off. Happy International Women's Day.